want to take a closer look at one of the dangers of the psychedelic experience. And to understand the danger, we need to have a bit of context about a couple of other things that you may or may not have in focus. The first one is the empathy continuum. You may have heard the word empath. You may be an empath and know it or not know it. But the phenomena around being an empath is one in which an empath feels the feelings of other people. Now, this can happen in a variety of ways. It can be a feeling within a crowd. It can be a feeling of a best friend, of a partner. It can be a feeling with a particular stranger in an intense interaction. As an empath, you might pick up on my feelings through media. And so these feelings may register in the body. They may register in the mind. I'm aware that, and you may label the feelings. They may just affect your mood, like a watercolor. If you can imagine your own state and having, a particular spectrum of color, and that the colors of other people wash through your field, the field around your body, and layer by layer, as you perceive reality through that field, the layers upon layers of emotion that's coming from outside of you can build up such that you start to see reality through those layers of emotion, which is consciously registered as a feeling. You may be feeling a mild relaxation, but the fear of this person, the fear of that person, the 5 or 6 different layers of fear by this person, the anxiety in this crowd may layer up. And so you're looking through that lens. And in a culture that does not train us in the art and science of working with our energetic and or emotional body, the natural assumption of an empath, or of any of us, when anger starts to build, is that this is our anger. And certainly it becomes our anger, but it may not be sourced in our anger, and meaning, we may just have spent some time with 200 very angry people, or one angry person again and again and again and again, and then suddenly we're aware of feeling all this anger. And the default assumption is, I'm angry about something. And if we look around, like, what am I angry about? It's a beautiful day. It's, things are going well. I just got a promotion. What am I so angry about? And particularly when it doesn't make sense, it's important to learn, I'm around you. I'm not angry at all. What are you angry about? And it's a real challenge. I know for myself as an empath, it's a real challenge to figure out which emotions are mine, which emotions are the emotions that I'm taking on in the present, and which of the emotions are emotions I've taken on in the past. Because trauma has a particular phenomenon, particularly in childhood, where the hate, the rage, the hostility, the terror of other people imprinting deeply on an emotional level at such an intense level that it creates the need to dissociate from those feelings in order to feel present and survive. Those dissociated emotions may not be an empath's actual emotions. They just may have been it's kind of like a boat that has just been flooded with other people's emotions starting to sink, and so it's cast off. And as we start to pull back those parts of self to reclaim them, they may be filled with other people's emotion. And this is a tricky thing in our culture, because the whole culture is used to emotional denial, lies, and dissociation around intense emotion. So, as a good Westerner, it's very likely that each of us does have intense wells of emotion that have never been welcome or honored or honestly talked about within the culture, and it's ours. And so that's there. That's ours. At the same time, this process of feeling other people's feelings, particularly for an empath, is not acknowledged as a reality. So in addition to that, there's probably plenty of times and situations where we have stored, carried, processed, and emoted other people's emotions. So this is a little bit of a context here. Now, this also ties in with, I highly recommend you go to the HSP, the Highly Sensitive Person Test. It'll bring up a result. You can, 5 minutes, if you're a highly sensitive person. Because this will also give you a clue and a confirmation that you are probably an empath. But there's two slightly different things. You can be an empath and not necessarily check all the, many of the boxes in the highly sensitive person category. But if you are an empath or a highly sensitive person, I think it's the similar strategies can be useful. So it's a good book to read or a good Audible download. So this is all leading up to context for understanding a particular danger in the psychedelic terrain. Because a psychedelic can best, one of its characteristics is of amplifying awareness, expanding consciousness in certain categories, in certain arenas. And this arena may be in the realm of empathy, of emotion. So, and it almost certainly involves heightened sensitivity in certain areas. So even if you are not normally an empath, even if you are not normally an HSP, the category of highly sensitive person, you may become an empath. You may become an HSP during the psychedelic experience. Now, why is that a big deal? Because if you're not conscious of that, it's a little bit, if you could imagine that your physical body, if you took a certain pill, became really porous, and bits of the light started coming into you, if you're near a wall, it starts drifting into your body, and you're moving around, and what's in your body goes out, and stuff in the environment comes in, and then you recrystallize after the experience. But you recrystallize with different foreign objects in your space, and because they're now inside that envelope of self-identity and of physicality, then you now define them as you. But a lot of those things and objects might not have originated with you. And it's always our job to kind of filter and discern. Like if I was to swallow a salt shaker right now, I could say that the salt shaker is a part of me. But it's not an innate part in me. It's not a healthy part of me. And the best thing to do, if an X-ray revealed a salt shaker in my belly, would be to get it out of there. And knowing our body, knowing our state enough to know what is us and what's a foreign object, is a level of awareness many of us are not trained for. So we might wake up with a salt shaker, metaphorically speaking, in our belly and say, I guess that's me. I mean, don't you criticize that salt shaker. Don't you dare touch that salt shaker. That's me. That's who I am. And it's like, no. That just came in a very porous moment when the membrane of self was very liquid. Something entered in. It's not yours. It's not who you are. But the traditional definition of identity, if it's inside this membrane, it's mine. If I'm thinking it, it's my thought. If I'm feeling it, it's my feeling. And we're very possessive about these things. Don't you criticize my feeling. It may not be your feeling at all. It may not be your thought. It may not be your belief. It may not be your muscle tension. And this is an area to be sensitive of, particularly while being around other people. One of the ways that we can protect ourselves from this is by being alone in media, alone in physical proximity, and focused within, and also on trusted guides. I use that term very loosely, but if you pray to a resonance, to a consciousness where you have a felt experience of that consciousness, and it means, well, you know it on a visceral level, not on a dogmatic level. God does this and this and this because it says so in this book. That's a dogmatic relationship with a named, stated deity. A living relationship is more, when I look at this image, when I open my mind in this certain way, I feel this corridor of energy, and I recognize it. It's always the same. And it helps with this. It helps me relax my shoulders. It helps to kind of center and purify my mind. It's a felt presence. And it usually doesn't have much to do with other human beings. And so in the sense of spiritual connection that is visceral, as opposed to, I read about Archangel Gabriel in the book and has wings and all that, so come in and you have wings, so you're Archangel Gabriel and all that. These are a little bit more dogmatic, left brain conceptualizations of energy and entity. So what is the danger? Well, the danger is, for example, you open yourself up, you're feeling great. Someone with a lot of suppressed rage comes into your proximity, and suddenly you feel suppressed rage. You don't track its origin. I mean, you haven't been trained, fine, fair enough. You don't track its origin. But a surge of rage comes up. Now, the brain is a brilliant, consistency-creating machine, among other things. And so your brain, unwilling to live in a reality that doesn't make sense, and observing a felt sense of explosive rage, will look around for the source on the assumption that because it's inside of you, it is yours. That's the assumption. That's a blind spot in some of these situations. The assumption is it's yours. There's no question. And then the brain will invent a story. Oh, I know what it is. My boss doesn't appreciate me enough. Of course I feel rage about that. And that's the last straw, and you go in and you quit your job and, whatever. Well, you created that story to create consistency with the explosion of rage, which may not be yours. And it just felt more comfortable to leave your job than to deal with this vulnerable and intimate thing of not knowing quite who me is, and realizing how vulnerable we are, and realizing how affected we are by other people and other energy fields in a variety of ways. And so to combat this danger, to respond in a healthy way, I recommend the book, The Highly Sensitive Person. I recommend exploring this topic of empath more. I recommend conversations. One of the ways that I sort this out is, first of all, I limit my relationships to those relationships where depth of exploration and quality time are present. Now, this is a game changer, and it is a relationship ender for a majority of relationships. A majority of Western Americans, in my experience, do not want to be conscious and present enough of whose energy is which and whose emotions are whose, and and that's fine. So they will just disappear if you have that focus, which for me is just fine. But with those people that remain, as I'm with people and emotions come up, I might say, I'm feeling a lot of fear suddenly. Could we have a check-in? Like, are you feeling any fear today? I didn't feel it before you arrived. Is there anything you could be feeling fear around? Does this feel like mine? Let's talk about this a little bit. And usually in a conversation, we'll identify where it is, and we'll create a story. It may not be the absolute truth, but it's a sense of our best sense of where that originated. And when we have that sense, we can respond to it. And if it goes away, like if I bring that up and my friend says, I am really scared. I got this letter from this lawyer. I don't know what it means. It's just terrifying. And if we spend a few minutes talking about that letter and what are the possible risks and how they can protect themselves legally, and I see their features relax and my fear goes away at the same time, then that's kind of confirmation. It's like, yeah, that we had the hypothesis that it was your fear, even though I'm feeling it, and we addressed it, and your fear went away and my fear went away at the same time. So that's kind of a confirmed hypothesis. Or there might be, or my fear might go down 20%, and then it turns out that the other 80% that remains is actually my fear that they're not going to like me when I tell them this, that, and the other. And so that's why my fear went up when they came in the room. So 20% was their lawyer thing, 80% was my fear of being judged because of this, this, and this. And when I talk about that, the fear dissipates. But one of the key tools of clearing emotion is naming it, placing it, acknowledging it, and being kind to it. And if it needs a technical action, like, I am scared you're going to reject me, I want to tell you what I'm scared about, and you can tell me if you have a reaction to that. And this gets back to that kindness and that quality of emotion. So The kind of thing that for me would be dangerous, that would be kind of the opposite of this, is taking psychedelics in a crowd or being very open in a crowd where lots of emotion starts coming up, and everyone that I approach, they're at a party or something and they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be seen. They don't want me to see them. They don't want to see me. They don't want to help disentangle this emotional web. So I'm just left carrying all kinds of chaotic emotions that come and go in proximity to a wide number of people. No one wants to own it. And then I go home just overloaded with the whole group's emotion, which brings me to another point. You can carry a person's emotion. You can carry the globe's emotion, a high surge of fear around the globe. You can carry a country's emotion. You can carry a community's emotion. There's a variety of fields, and depending on what you tune into and are open to, personally, community, nationally, at work, etc., you can be affected by those fields. And your openness can vary at different times, and the intensity of emotion can vary. So, for example, if you open yourself up to an extreme level, at the very moment there is an extreme intensity of emotion at the same point where you are tuning in to that arena of a group, of a world, you get a high charge, very rapid, like high bandwidth transfer of energy and emotion into your space. If you're very low emotion and there's a very high intensity and all that, it's going to be more than if there's just a mild emotion, or if just one person is feeling it rather than 2,000 people are feeling it. So this is just a principle to understand. The protocol for clearing it, first of all, get a sense of your field. Get a sense of your personal boundary. I'm going to just do this momentarily. A sense of your boundary. And either through image or emotion or imagination, get a sense of if there is anything that's not you. For example, right here, I just see something that's not quite me. I'm going to take it outside my field. There's something else. I'm going to take it outside my field. I'm going to play with it in imagination. Imagination is a very powerful thing. It affects our mental, emotional body considerably, and that's 2/3 of our consciousness. So like I'm going to put a mirror, a silver mirror, so that some of the things that are, and actually I'm going to do a carbon mirror because that's what blocks this particular link. It's a carbon mirror. Different, depending on the types of energies, different types of textures and substances in the field will interfere. Like, one will bounce the light, another will absorb the heat. It was more of a heat connection than a light connection. So the carbon insulated the heat. So it's giving me insulation in that sense. And you will feel a difference. If you don't feel any difference, you're probably not in a sensitized state, so you're fine anyway. But this is a protocol to be aware of your boundary. And then finally, to start placing things. Who have I been in contact with? Mentally, emotionally, and physically. If you're thinking about your mom and suddenly you get a headache, you are in contact with your mom mentally, or at least the energetic construct of your mom. If you think of your mom and you feel excited, you're connected. So all connections are not bad. I mean, if you're porously open up, to beautiful innocence and love and joy, you feel all this love and joy. Where did it come from? It's not me. No, it isn't. But you can also be discerning and say, welcome, this isn't me, but this is the kind of me I would like to be. So come on in, be a part of my energy field, and flow right through. But, someone's rage and hatred and wanting to kill their boss, suddenly you want to go kill your boss. I mean, yeah, I don't want to let that in. So let's give that back to that person I just met that seemed so furious as they were texting away, and that was probably to their boss, And so this is part of a protocol of clearing, releasing energy in a wide array of techniques. You can use visualizing, imagining, etc. But the most important thing is just being aware that it's possible and that it's probable when you take a psychedelic that, like for example, if I think of someone deeply while I'm on a psychedelic, there's a much higher probability that there's going to be an email from them when I'm done with my trip, or a phone call that they'll reach out, even if I haven't talked with them for months, because the boundaries are more liquid. And so it just means being more responsible. In the same way, if you had some crystalline pure water that was protected inside a concrete bunker, but then for this 10-hour period, it was only going to be protected by a flimsy plastic bag, you wouldn't want to just crash that plastic bag around in a party. You'd want to give it, in a space where it's not going to be stepped on and punctured and all of that. So it's that kind of idea, and I hope that helps.